Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into Yuval Noah Harari's perspective on information,
Okay.
truth, and power.
Sounds good.
We've got his interview as our main source.
Right.
And honestly, some of this stuff is straight up mind-bending.
It really challenges some basic assumptions, doesn't it? Like, we tend to think of information as being about facts, right?
Right.
But Harari argues it's more about connection. It's the stories we tell ourselves, the symbols we rally around that truly shape our reality.
Okay, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
But how does that actually work?
Well,
Give me an example.
think about the image of Jesus.
Okay.
It's one of the most recognizable images in the world, plastered everywhere, from churches to T-shirts. But Harari points out that we have absolutely no idea what Jesus actually looked like.
Really?
Every depiction is purely artistic license, created centuries after his supposed lifetime.
So you're telling me this iconic image, this powerful symbol of faith for billions of people, is essentially based on nothing? Yeah.
Exactly, and that's precisely Harari's point. It's not about factual accuracy, it's about shared belief. That image connects people across time and space, creating a sense of community and shared identity. It's information as a unifying force, regardless of its truthfulness.
But isn't that a bit dangerous? I mean, what happens when that shared information is based on, let's say, less than noble intentions?
That's where things get really interesting. Harari argues that whoever controls the narrative controls the information. He dives deep into the history of books, initially seen as tools for democratizing knowledge. But even with books, there's always an editor or a curator deciding what gets included and what gets left out.
So even something as seemingly objective as a book is subject to these power dynamics.
Yeah.
Can you give me a specific example?
Take the Bible, for instance. Early Christianity had a wide array of texts and interpretations floating around. But when the Bible was compiled, only a select few were chosen, shaping Christian doctrine for centuries to come. Whoever made those editorial decisions had an immense impact on the course of history.
It's almost like someone creating a playlist, picking and choosing the tracks to create a specific mood or message. But in this case, the playlist shaped the beliefs of billions.
Precisely. And with the invention of the printing press, we see this dynamic on a whole other level. Suddenly, information could be mass-produced and disseminated much faster. It led to incredible advances, but also a proliferation of harmful content.
I'm thinking about that witch hunting manual, the Malleus Maleficarum. It spread like wildfire thanks to the printing press, and it contained some truly outlandish claims.
Oh, absolutely. Some of the things in there are just absurd. The idea that witches could steal men's penises, for example. Talk about misinformation gone wild.
Wow.
It really shows how technological progress doesn't automatically equate to enlightenment.
And that brings us to the digital age. We've got information zipping around the globe at lightning speed, but who's controlling the flow?
Well, for the first time, it's not entirely humans. Algorithms on social media and search engines have become the new gatekeepers, deciding what we see, what we read, what we even think about.
So are you saying we're at the mercy of these algorithms? How much control do we actually have over the information we consume?
That's a question we all need to be asking ourselves. Think about your own online habits. How much of what you see is organically discovered versus being fed to you by an algorithm? It's a bit unsettling when you really start to consider it.
Harari uses a really interesting analogy to describe this power dynamic. He compares bureaucracy to a kind of sorcery, saying it's this almost magical system that controls our lives through information.
It sounds out there, but think about it. A simple document like a tax bill or a property deed can have a profound impact on your life. It's information given power through systems and institutions.
He even uses the example of John Snow, the physician who tracked the source of a cholera outbreak in London. Meticulous record-keeping, essentially bureaucracy at its best, saved lives. But then he flips it and points to how bureaucratic systems were used to disenfranchise Native Americans, using documents to legitimize land grabs.
It highlights how bureaucracy is this double-edged sword. It can be used for incredible good, but also for immense harm. And what's concerning now is that AI is rapidly becoming the new bureaucrat.
So we're not just talking about algorithms curating our news feeds anymore. We're talking about algorithms making decisions about our finances, our healthcare, our very livelihoods.
Exactly. And that brings us to one of the most fundamental questions of our time. Are we building machines that feel you? Because if we're handing over this level of control, it's no longer just about intelligence. It's about consciousness, about understanding the nuances of the human experience.
Well, AI is getting incredibly intelligent, that's for sure. But is there any evidence that these systems are actually sentient? Do they experience emotions the way we do?
That's the million-dollar question. And frankly, we just don't have the answer yet. But here's the kicker. There are massive financial incentives to create AI that can at least mimic emotions convincingly.
I'm picturing those sex robots you mentioned earlier,
Right.
or even political bots designed to emotionally manipulate voters. Scary stuff.
It is, and it raises a philosophical conundrum. If a machine can convince you it understands your feelings, does it matter if those feelings are real in the biological sense?
Wow, that's really making me think. Because even if it's just a simulation, the impact on our relationships, on our sense of trust, could be incredibly profound.
Absolutely, and it's something we need to grapple with as AI becomes increasingly integrated into our lives.
Okay, well, we've covered a lot of ground here. We've gone from Jesus to algorithms, witch hunts, to AI bureaucrats. It's clear that information in all its forms has shaped humanity from the very beginning. And now we're entering a new era where the stakes are higher than ever.
So where do we go from here? How do we navigate this uncertain future? Well, Harari has some thoughts on that, and we'll explore them in more detail next time.
Sounds good. Looking forward to it.
Me too.
See you then.
Before we were discussing how AI is becoming this powerful new force shaping how we interact with information, and we touched on that unsettling question: can AI actually develop feelings, or is it all just a clever simulation?
It's a question that really gets to the heart of what it means to be human, doesn't it? Like, we take for granted that our emotions are genuine, that our experiences are unique. But what happens when machines start blurring those lines?
Harari uses this analogy of birds and airplanes. Both can fly, but they do so through entirely different mechanisms. Just because AI can mimic human behavior, even emotional responses, doesn't mean it's experiencing those emotions in the same way we do.
So it's like a really sophisticated puppet show.
Yeah.
Right? You've got these incredibly lifelike puppets, but there's still someone pulling the strings, dictating their every move.
Yeah.
In this case, the puppeteer is the algorithm.
Exactly. And the danger is that we might mistake the puppet for a real person, especially as AI gets better at simulating human interaction.
Yeah.
And let's not forget the powerful financial incentives driving this development.
You mentioned sex robots earlier.
Yeah.
I mean, that's already a reality, right?
Yeah.
And as AI becomes more sophisticated, it's not hard to imagine these machines becoming incredibly persuasive, even manipulative.
Harari talks about intimacy itself becoming weaponized. In the past, a dictator could control attention, force people to listen to propaganda broadcasts. But they couldn't manufacture genuine emotional connections on a mass scale. AI changes all that.
It's like the difference between someone shouting at you through a megaphone versus someone whispering in your ear. One grabs your attention, the other seduces your trust. And when AI can personalize those whispers to exploit our individual vulnerabilities, it becomes a whole new ballgame.
And how do we even begin to distinguish genuine connection from artificial manipulation? As those lines get blurrier, our very sense of reality could be up for grabs. It's a pretty profound philosophical dilemma, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And it raises all sorts of questions about what it even means to be human in a world where machines are becoming increasingly adept at mirroring our behavior. It's almost like a Turing test for the soul.
That's a great way to put it. If we can't even tell the difference between genuine emotion and a cleverly crafted simulation, what does that say about our own humanity? It's something we need to grapple with as AI becomes more and more integrated into our lives.
So it feels like we're standing at a crossroads. On one hand, AI has this incredible potential to solve complex problems, improve our lives in countless ways. But on the other hand, there's this very real risk that we're creating something we can't control, something that could ultimately dehumanize us.
Harari reminds us that while technology may advance relentlessly, the values that guide its development are a matter of human choice. We have the power to decide whether AI will be a force for good or a tool for control and manipulation.
But how do we ensure those decisions are made in the best interest of humanity? I mean, we're talking about a technology that's evolving at an exponential rate. Can we even keep up?
It's a huge challenge, for sure. Harari advocates for a global effort to monitor and regulate AI development. He suggests establishing an international organization independent of any particular government or corporation to keep tabs on AI advancements and keep the public informed.
That sounds like a tall order, especially given the geopolitical tensions and the competitive pressures surrounding AI. Do you think it's actually feasible?
It won't be easy, but I think there's enough common ground to make it possible. No one wants to see AI spiraling out of control, regardless of their political leanings. It's kind of like the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, but for artificial intelligence.
Right, because if we fail to establish some kind of international norms and safeguards, we risk an AI arms race that could have catastrophic consequences. We've seen how that played out with nuclear weapons, and AI has the potential to be even more destabilizing.
Exactly. And this is where public awareness becomes crucial. It's not just about governments and tech companies hashing things out behind closed doors. We need to demystify AI, educate people about its potential benefits and risks, and empower them to demand ethical considerations in its development.
It all comes back to those institutions we talked about earlier. They may be flawed, but they represent our best attempt at collective decision-making, at holding power accountable.
Absolutely. And we need to strengthen those institutions and maybe even create new ones specifically focused on AI governance. We can't just assume that the market will regulate itself or that benevolent tech leaders will always make the right choices.
So we need regulation, public awareness, but what about education? I mean, how do we prepare future generations for a world where AI is so deeply interwoven into the fabric of society?
Harari talks about the importance of prioritizing emotional intelligence and social skills in education. In a rapidly changing world where AI is automating more and more tasks, the ability to adapt, collaborate, and build meaningful relationships will be even more valuable than purely technical skills.
Because those are the uniquely human qualities that AI, at least for now, can't replicate. It's about fostering creativity, critical thinking, empathy, those skills that will be crucial for navigating a world alongside increasingly intelligent machines.
He also stresses the importance of understanding how information itself works, how it can be manipulated, and how to discern truth from falsehood in an increasingly complex information landscape. It's about cultivating a healthy skepticism, but also a faith in the power of human reason and the pursuit of truth.
It's like that saying, give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. In this case, we need to teach people how to think critically about information, how to navigate this digital world without getting lost in the noise or falling prey to manipulation.
Exactly. It's about empowering individuals to become responsible stewards of information, to actively participate in shaping the future of AI rather than simply being passive consumers subject to its whims.
We've talked a lot about the potential risks of AI, but I want to circle back to the possibilities. I mean, This technology has the potential to revolutionize everything from healthcare and education to transportation and energy. It could help us solve some of the most pressing challenges facing humanity.
Absolutely. And that's what makes this such a pivotal moment. We have a chance to shape the trajectory of AI development to ensure that it's used to uplift humanity, not exploit or control it. It's a daunting task, but also an incredibly exciting one.
So where do we go from here? What concrete steps can we take to make sure that AI is a force for good in the world?
I mean, it all sounds a bit overwhelming, to be honest. We were just talking about, the potential for AI to do so much good in the world.
Right.
But also the potential downsides if it's not developed in a responsible way. It feels like we're at a real turning point here.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
All right.
I think Harari really emphasizes that the future isn't preordained.
Yeah.
We're not passive passengers on this kind of technological roller coaster.
Our choices, both individually and collectively, will determine what happens with AI and how it impacts society.
He also cautions against, kind of giving into cynicism too, right?
Yeah.
Like he says that if we lose faith in the pursuit of truth, if we lose faith in the possibility of collective action, we actually become more susceptible to manipulation and to authoritarianism.
Exactly. It's a tricky balance to strike, right?
Yeah.
We need that healthy skepticism to be able to sort through all the information that's out there and figure out what's real and what's not.
Right.
But we can't let that skepticism turn into apathy or despair. We have to maintain that belief that we can shape the future, that our actions can make a difference.
One of the things that really struck me was his emphasis on how subjective information is. What we might perceive as the truth is often colored by our own pre-existing beliefs, our cultural background, our own personal experiences.
And this becomes even more, I think, pertinent in the age of social media, where algorithms are curating our news feeds based on, what we clicked on previously. So we're increasingly, I think, inhabiting these echo chambers where we're just surrounded by information that confirms our existing biases.
It's like we're all speaking different languages,
right?
Even when we're using the same words.
Exactly.
And it creates these divides where it becomes very, very difficult to have any kind of meaningful conversation with someone who holds a different perspective.
Yeah, and as AI gets more sophisticated, it can exploit that through, these personalized propaganda campaigns and really targeted misinformation, which is...
Yeah, it's a little frightening when you think about it.
It is.
It seems like we almost need to develop a whole new set of skills to navigate this world.
Yeah.
Where information is coming at us from all directions. And,
right.
And it's hard to even know what to trust.
Yeah, Harari uses this phrase, information literacy. And he talks about how we need this new type of literacy to be able to discern what's real, what's not, to be able to evaluate sources, identify biases, and, recognize when we might be, being manipulated.
It's like being a detective almost, right?
Yeah.
You have to put the pieces together,
exactly.
Try and figure out what's going on. He also talks about how important it is to understand that, information is never really neutral.
Right.
There's always some kind of agenda behind it, whether it's conscious or unconscious.
Absolutely.
And as we're, ceding more and more decision-making to algorithms, it becomes even more critical to understand how those algorithms work, what data sets they're trained on, what inherent biases they may contain.
Yeah, because they're not truly objective.
Right.
They were created by people.
Exactly.
They were trained on data that reflects, our own worldview, our own limitations, our own biases.
Yeah. And if we're not careful, we're going to end up hardwiring those biases into, this digital world that we're building.
It's a sobering thought, but I think also, a call to action that we need to be aware of these potential pitfalls,
right?
And demand transparency and accountability from the people who are building these technologies.
It really feels like we're at a crossroads.
Yes.
And the decisions that we make now, will determine what kind of future we create, not just for ourselves, but for many generations to come.
And I think, Harari leaves us with a very empowering message that, he really urges us to have these conversations about AI, about its potential and its perils, and to really kind of cultivate this culture of ethical awareness,
right? So
that, we can work together to ensure that these technologies are used to benefit humanity.
That's a great note to end on. It's a reminder that we have agency. We're not just, helpless bystanders in this, this technological revolution.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the world of information, truth, and power.
My pleasure.
And we hope you'll continue to explore these ideas.
Absolutely.
And engage in these conversations and think about, how you can make a difference, because it's really up to all of us to shape the future that we want to see.
I agree.